Final Fantasy XIV's Dawntrail expansion has mostly negative reviews on Steam, which puts it behind both Dustbin as well as Concord. And to put it as nicely as I can, that's pretty ridiculous. As much as it pains me to do so, but I'm also going to be obligated to do this, I have a type, and it is Bearded Nerdy Gamer Guys. So before someone goes and starts saying some weird stuff in the comments, you can already stop. These are two games that respectfully, I do think it's absolutely insane to see any world where it could be considered better than Dawntrail or even on the same level as Dawntrail. This is going to have some level of spoilers, although I really don't care to get into the exact machinations of anything. I'd say the biggest spoiler is if you don't know what Solution 9 is, then you might want to click off. I'm going to start by saying that Dawntrail's combat, in terms of like dungeons, in terms of the normal raids and the savage raids, and again we are looking at getting a new exploration zone for those who have played Final Fantasy XIV in the past. That means something similar to Eureka or something similar to Boja. And those are both very popular, very lively activities. Even to this day we still see groups running Eureka like all the time, and that was what, 8 years ago in Stormblood? But more to the present is the current dungeon content is noticeable step up in terms of not just difficulty, because I don't think that pure difficulty begets fun gameplay. I do believe that there's an aspect of that is important in games. Look at Dark Souls, look at Black Myth, Wukong for another example. There is, however, a noticeable increase in the dynamics of the mechanics as well as just how things are really shifting around, which I found even the leveling dungeon gameplay really fun. Like, I leveled all of the jobs up to 100 before the Agalia raid. I don't want to call it like exploit because it's not an exploit, but before the Agalia runs really became popular for experience, I was running everything through the new Dawntrail dungeons and had a blast through it genuinely because of all the mechanics. The normal raids are undeniably some of the most interesting normal raids that we've ever had. And the Savage tier, a lot of people are saying that the reason why the clear rates on the Savage tier is so high is just because it's so easy. And I would have a counterpoint saying that this Savage raid is probably the best Savage raid tier that we have really actually ever had in the game. It's very hard to not say that the raid story, because it does have its own kind of branch off story of its own, not getting into spoilers of it here, it's captivating. The music in the fights is amazing. Honeybee Lovely has become a sensation across the internet. She has absolutely lived up to her character, to say the least. Brute Bomber, it's kind of exactly what you would expect from a stereotypical douchebag wrestler guy that's just like macho and literally taking a doping drought during the combat. It's ridiculous.
And he was like, oh, you need to come to the village. And I was just like, the village? So I'm like, what the fuck is that? You know, it sounds crazy. And indeed it was.
Crowds cheering in the background of these fights, for the record. And then you have M4S, which is just a beautiful fight from top to bottom. I'd say that this is easily the most captivating Savage raid tier ever. The next thing that I want to say is that the Dawntrail cities are incredible. Solution 9 is absolutely right up my alley. I am a huge, and always have been a huge fan of the cyberpunk aesthetic. I grew up on things like Deus Ex, and then like Deus Ex Human Revolution, and then you get the point. Really wish that they continued making games like that, because I think that Square Enix has stopped that, but that is right up my alley. That literally was like my childhood inspiration for why I even went to school in the first place. I absolutely love it. And then obviously we have like Cyberpunk 2077 and so on. I really do love the city. My one thing that I would say is that I do earnestly, genuinely hope that the developers during this expansion through the patch cycle add more content into Solution 9, because I truly honestly want to have no reason to leave it. I honestly genuinely am sick of Limbs so after all these years, and yeah. Solution 9 is really good. And now in terms of Tuliolol, which is that next city, there is absolutely a charm and appeal to it too. Like, even if you look at the little apartment that they give in there, you get like this like open like balcony that goes and looks out onto the ocean and stuff. And I do believe that the developers are taking notes of things like that in terms of what they may do with future apartments that they offer in game. And unfortunately, that's as much as I'm going to say, because the exact machinations of the housing system are very deep and nuanced, but basically player housing, I do see them taking notes for that. And then we get into the other things, like obviously the music is incredible. Female Hrothgar also were such a solid, really well taken up addition to the game. Like, I'm going to be honest, the amount of female Hrothgars that I've seen actually has been genuinely surprising. I'm seeing them like so often that I can undeniably say that this is definitely a pretty popular race. And also keep in mind that this is a very long running MMORPG at this time, and so a lot of people are very hesitant to change the character because they obviously have grown attached to it. And so to see so many people take that plunge and make that leap, I think is incredible and speaks really to how well made they were. Now, there's a whole bunch of little things that I could say, like the housing items that they added in Dawntrail are really good. The general systems that they added into the Dawntrail, like the quality of life systems and the UI updates, the ability to dye multiple pieces of glamour, while it's not perfect, and I do think that they could have taken the system forward a few steps, I undeniably think that they absolutely added in some really good systems. They have added brand new block functionalities and ability to remove people from houses, as well as like secure your lodestone profile, which is just your character's public profile. There is undeniably a whole lot that Dawntrail added systems-wise, UI-wise, quality of life-wise, that is very, very, very good. The next thing is that Dawntrail also added two very, very good jobs, which is Pictomancer and Viper. And without going into the exact details of all of them, like Viper is the DPS that I personally would like to play very much. I very much love the Viper. Pictomancer is also very fun. The uptake of these two brand new jobs added in Dawntrail has been pretty severe and very dramatic. It's very weird to see a group not have a Pictomancer at this point, although there's a lot of reasons, but in general, player enjoyment of Pictomancer and Viper has been very high. Now, while I could continue, and I actually really could, talking about strong points of Dawntrail, because I do genuinely believe that there are a lot, otherwise, if I'm very honest, for reasons I'm not going to get into this video because I know no one wants to hear about it, I personally wouldn't be playing this game. I would not. But I genuinely think that this is a very good expansion. I am genuinely enjoying playing the game. And with that being said, let's talk about Wuk Lamat and the story. I am going to be toxic here for a second. Wuk Lamat has more character in her pinky than any Concord character. Wuk Lamat takes a dump with higher quality character design and story and personability than any of the dog shit that I saw in Dustborn. And again, my type is nerdy, bearded gamer guys, before people get weird in the comments. That's just the truth. Dustborn and Concord are not good. And again, that's just one person's opinion. You don't need to do anything with that, but I really am shocked at seeing the Steam reviews for Dawntrail being lower than these two choices. That's what we're going to use as the working word, choices. I can see how the story of Dawntrail would have a hard time living up to what people's expectations were. I think if we took Dawntrail and its storyline in a total vacuum, there are issues, which I will talk about in a moment. However, we need to remember that Dawntrail just followed Endwalker, which was the main... Okay, so the patches, I did like the story. A lot of people disagree with me, but the main part of Endwalker was an absolute masterpiece. I think that that is very hard to argue with. The entire saga from 6.0 to like the end of it was just brilliant. I also think that Shadowbringers, and in my opinion it was my favorite expansion. If people actually have to ask me, Shadowbringers was definitely my favorite expansion. Shadowbringers storyline was peerless. It was gorgeous. And so reality is, when you look at Dawntrail had a lot to live up to, and I really genuinely don't think it was fair. Dawntrail, because we all know that or maybe not everyone, most veteran Final Fantasy XIV players know that Endwalker was really the tying up of 10-year saga of Zodiark and Hydaelyn, and that Dawntrail is really trying to introduce the next 10 years. And I'm not going to talk about all the different plot lines, but if you played through, like, in particular the last map, I personally could see a lot of different branches that I could literally see entire expansions built off of. Personally, I want to see that tree. I wonder how many people are even going to know what I'm talking about with that. I think that's as close as we can get to non-spoilery, but inferring what it could be without saying it. I want to see that tree. I really want to see that tree. Now, I am going to get spicy here with some of the story elements of Dawntrail. In general, I did actually like the story. I literally did not skip cutscenes. I did not blast through text. I literally would talk to all of the different NPCs around the character and get more context. This is also one of the reasons why it took me so long to get through the story. For those who haven't really followed up on my lore, I literally leveled up everything before I continued the story, just because there was a gondola, reminded me of Black Swan Gondola in San Diego. I know no one wants to hear about it, but I just had to stop at some point. But that's how slow I went through the story. So I literally did talk to every NPC, got all the context. I do genuinely, saying that, believe that the story was very good. The exposition that the additional characters that were optional to talk to would add into the current cutscene was always relevant. I did find it interesting. They definitely kept their personalities throughout it. I think sometimes more so through that additional expositional context than some of the cutscenes, but without going into too many spoilers. That I'm going to leave there. However, overall, Dawntrail, I did like a lot of the introductory themes. They were definitely a little bit slower than one would want, because, I mean, just going off the heels of Endwalker and the End of the World, it was definitely a jarring experience to go and then be worried about, like, alpacas, which I think was cute, and I think that the lessons learned through it were very cute, and it did introduce a diversity of characters and a new storyline, in my opinion, quite well, which obviously then started to get a little bit more ramped up when we were looking at things like Solution 9. I think, in terms of Dawntrail's story, that there are about 3 points that I do believe are its weak points, and they're more related to the story. The first thing is that there is a lot of very basic talking points that are repeated to the level of brutality. There's no way to say it other than that. There were some things that were, like, said about 20 times, and I was like, God, am I that dumb? And I mean, I could be that dumb, who knows, but I felt that it was too much. Also, when we got to the giants, I think the worst thing ever that I actually did genuinely consider skipping was because the giants had this very drawn out speech. It was very, 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 very drawn out. It was probably the one point during the story what I actually kind of wanted to skip was the speaking of the giants. And this isn't a slam against the voice actors. They were told to do the role, and I think that they did the role very well. However, a world ruled by those giants would be a world that I would definitely not want to be a part of. Now, Wuk Lamat I don't think is the worst character, and I do retain that she has more quality of character in her Pinky than anything from Dustbin or Concord. But there were a few times where it was like, talk to Sveen. And I was like, please. This is God, pray return to the Waking Sands in the year 2024. Oh my God. I was so young when it was pray return to the Waking Sands, guys. And now it's pray return to talk to Wuk Lamat. But I still, in no world, with all this being said, can imagine why Dawntrail has a lower review than Shitbin and Concord. That's all.